Um, I want to thank for the opportunity to speak to you today. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them, and I will do my best to find the chat or the question and answer box on my screen. Um, COVID-19 vaccinations. We knew about this late last year coming down the pipeline, and there was a lot of discussion, a lot of publications as to what we would be doing as businesses, as owners, managers, HR directors, how we would proceed to the future if they are actually coming, which we now know they are. And there's been a number of individuals throughout the state of Michigan and then also the United States and worldwide that have received some form of a vaccination, either from Moderna, Pfizer, Johnson and Johnson, and then I think it was AstraZeneca is the other one. So today's topic is the COVID-19 vaccinations. Can you mandate them? And if you can, should you mandate them? And what I would like for everybody to take away from today's webinar is it legal to mandate them? And if it is, what are some pitfalls that everybody should be aware of? And then also the second point here is it right for your workplace? Just because you can mandate them, or if you can't mandate them, what is your workplace, what does it consist of? How is it that you're running your business? How does it interact with the community? Those are the types of things that you really should be looking at in determining if you should or shouldn't mandate vaccination. Then the other part is be mindful of the potential liabilities. Again, just because you can mandate something such as a vaccine here, it doesn't mean that there aren't any downsides. So we'll address a few of those as we proceed. So the question here, can you mandate COVID-19 vaccinations? The general answer is yes. Now, like anything with regards to the legal community, there usually is not a definitive yes or no. We like everything to be in the gray area, and this is really one that does fall within the gray area. There has not been much guidance from the Biden administration with regards to mandating, nor has there been any guidance from the Whitmer-led administration. Neither of them have come out and specifically said, yes, you may mandate them. So we have to look to how we have mandated prior vaccinations. So how we have come to the answer of generally yes, we have to go back to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC. This is an organization that is heavily involved with the, and where I'm going to be addressing now is looking back at the swine flu from 2009. This is the first, the EEOC first tackled this mandatory vaccinations in response to the H1N1, the swine flu pandemic in 2009. Now, there is a publication that was put out by the EEOC that sets forth a preparedness for the workplace. And it provides guidance regarding the disability related medical inquiries and medical examinations that could be relevant in a pandemic. Now, this publication was put out in 2009, and it allows for the workplace to set up various policies, guidelines to institute a mandatory vaccination, which is what a lot of hospitals you will see have a mandatory flu vaccine. Many businesses do not. They more or less encourage it. But in order to follow through with the guidance from the EEOC, we have to look to the Americans with Disability Act, the ADA, as well as Title VII. The ADA governs any disabilities that an individual may have, and then Title VII prohibits any discrimination basis on here we're going to focus on religion, but it also looks at age, sex, gender. So we do have with the Title VII, for the purposes of this discussion, we'll be looking at a religious belief. So under the ADA and Title VII, you cannot, an employer is prohibited from compelling its employees to be vaccinated for flu, regardless of their medical condition or religious belief. Now, this is even true during a pandemic. Now, looking at the ADA is, I believe I have a question. Hold on. The question here is, I was informed that they can be mandated provided a local or state health department stated that you could. I do not believe that any have in Michigan. That is correct. Nothing has specifically, or at least that I have seen, that have any states that have specifically mandated the use of a vaccination. Is what we are going on is the guidance from under the flu vaccine, because the EEOC has not specifically come out and stated that you can mandate, nor has the ADA. They have alluded to it in the, and we will get to in a few slides, the updated guidance from the EEOC. So under the ADA, an employee with an underlying medical condition should be entitled to an exemption. Now, the key here is if it's requested. The employee has to request to have an exemption from a mandatory vaccination for medical reasons. You can request that a physician provide what the medical reason is. So that is under the ADA. And then under Title VII, where we're focusing on the religious aspect, is that it protects employees with a sincerely held religious belief, practice, or observance. So sincerely held religious belief is the key here. And that is from being forced to undergo an vaccination if it is legitimately offends an employee's religious belief. We will address a few, how broad this is, but it has to be a sincerely held religious belief. That is the key with regards to the Title VII exemption for the vaccination. So then if an employee has a sincerely held religious belief under Title VII or an underlying medical condition provided for under the ADA, then what must an employer do? An employer must provide accommodations. Now, I have a little asterisk by that. The accommodations could include minimizing interactions with other employees or the general public. For example, you can have flexible scheduling. You can have a voluntary shift substitutions or swapping of shifts. And you can allow workers to be performing their work from a remote location or even virtually via Zoom. A lot of this is going on right now during the pandemic. But the asterisk here is that it cannot pose an undue hardship. So if an individual or your business is primarily hospital related, or if you're in the construction industry at a construction site and the individuals need to be present, and then allowing somebody to work remotely, that might pose an undue hardship on your business. Now, with regards to religion, it goes a step further. Not only is it an undue hardship, but it also has to be, it cannot be more than a de minimis cost to the employer's business operations. So even though you may allow it, you have to look at how is it affecting your business. And under religious accommodations, can a personal anti-vaccination belief be one of those that would be rise to the level that I don't want to take the vaccination? Employers' opposition to vaccination under this case, Fallon versus Mercy, it was a personal belief and it did not occupy a place in his life similar to that occupied by a more traditional faith. Now, it has a lot of people have come out, I should say, I say a lot because those that I have spoken to, that they do not want to get it because they're just personally opposed to it. Now, that is not a legitimate reason under the ADA or even a religious belief to oppose anti-vaccination. Political reasons do not fall under the religious exception, nor do personal beliefs. Now, with every case, there's always the opposite. So there is a case that I had found down in the Southern District of Ohio that addresses veganism. Now, veganism, I would never have thought would be a religious exception, but however, the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Ohio found that it is plausible that a plaintiff could subscribe to veganism with a sincerity equating that of a traditional religious view. The case is there. This was a case where the plaintiff was opposing the mandatory flu vaccine. So when the court ruled denying a motion to dismiss that was brought by the defendant. So I do not know what the outcome of this case was, but this is a case that does show that at least from a standpoint to prevail on a motion to dismiss in the Southern District of Ohio, veganism could rise to the level of a religious belief. Now, these religious accommodations do allow the employer to impose infection control if it is granted. For example, if the individual has a sincerely held religious belief and that is granted and they are not vaccinated, then the employer may impose other infection control methods such as masks, provided that you are not, that is a legitimate business purpose and it's done in a non-discriminatory and non-retaliatory fashion. Medical accommodations, the courts are, we have some split circuit whether sensitivity to vaccination actually constitutes a covered disability. The Eighth Circuit held that the alleged chemical sensitivities and allergies do not constitute a disability under the ADA. However, the Third Circuit held that a history of allergies and anxiety related to the possible side effects qualified as an ADA-covered disability. Now, under the Third Circuit, I found this to be extremely interesting because of the fact of anxiety. I think that could be parlayed into the pandemic, where people have, they're anxious about going back to work with regards to the virus that is out there. However, this actually focuses on the use of the vaccine itself and not the fear of returning to the workplace. Those are two separate issues. Because I have heard some people try to bring about the Third Circuit's rulings and people being fear and having anxiety about returning to the workplace. But the split only, from what I have found, only concerns the flu vaccines. And we also have the coronavirus pandemic. Now, we have a little bit of the history that we just went over as to how we came about mandating flu vaccines and the basis for it, and then also the exceptions under the ADA and then the Title VII religious exception. The coronavirus pandemic came about in February, March of 2020. And then the EEOC updated its pandemic preparedness for the workplace that we had discussed earlier, that was initially provided in 2009. They updated in the December of 2020. Here is where the EEOC acknowledged that the COVID-19 pandemic met the ADA's direct threat standard, and it permits more extensive medical inquiries and controls in the workplace. Now, this direct threat is key, which is related to the actual virus. So the virus is posing a direct threat, which now has permitted more extensive medical inquiries, such as a lot of the 4 questions that we, some businesses, mine included, have to respond to on a daily basis if you come in. So it permits a more extensive medical inquiry. You can ask if you've been vaccinated, resulting in an answer of yes or no, but any further questioning, such as why not, is not permitted, because now you are getting into a more extensive medical inquiry that it probably does not have a legitimate business purpose. And then this direct threat, as I indicated earlier, does allow more freedom to the employers to impose medical and other protocols and standards that may not be lawful without a pandemic. So the direct threat is where you have someone with COVID-19 or symptoms in the workplace, and it poses a significant risk of substantial harm to others in the workplace. That's a lot of words there to basically say that you have a person who is or is not or could be infected and is now coming into the workplace and is now opening up potential harm to others. The question that I have been asked is, can you ask for proof of vaccination in the workplace? It's an interesting question, because I was speaking to the BOMA personnel earlier, and a number of states, and I will touch upon this now, a number of states have submitted legislation to either prohibit the mandatory vaccinations and or prohibiting the use of vaccination cards. Michigan was not one of them. However, as of yesterday, a bill has been introduced in the state of Michigan that will prohibit the, it's House Bill 4667, and it prohibits COVID-19 vaccination passports. So right now it is open. You can ask if an individual has been vaccinated, but it depends on where we go with this legislation that has been introduced. It is most likely something that our governor, if it hits her desk, probably will not sign. But in reading the article here, it says that the Michigan bill does not prohibit businesses from requiring vaccine passports. So it appears to be a carve out in some form. I did not have an opportunity to pull up this bill this morning, but I wanted to bring this to your attention because Michigan, as of March 2021, was not one of the many states that was introducing legislation until I read that this morning. So moving on with the direct threat, you have an unvaccinated person who would likely pose a direct threat to others. And what this is leading up to is the next bullet point on this slide, and that is where its implication is that the mandatory vaccinations are permissible. The guidance from the EEOC does not specifically state that you can mandate the COVID-19 vaccination. However, it does imply that given the direct threat under the ADA and that an unvaccinated person would likely pose a direct threat to others within the workplace, that mandatory vaccinations are permissible. However, they are subject to the accommodations for religious objections and disability, those that we discussed earlier under the ADA and Title VII. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, under OSHA, you have employers have a duty under the laws for Occupational Safety and Health Act to take steps to ensure the workplace is safe. These are enforced by OSHA. I'm not going to spend much more time on this, but this is another agency that does require employers or imposes on them the duty to take steps to ensure a workplace is safe. So not only do you have the ADA where you have a direct threat standard, you have the EEOC who has now utilized that standard into its guidance and allowing for the implication of, or for the administration of vaccines that can be mandatory. You also have now the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, which is now imposing duties on the workplace. So taking all that together, there is the general answer is yes, you can mandate the COVID-19 vaccination. So that leads us to the next question. The next $1 million question is, should you mandate? This is a question that is out there. There's been a number of articles written. There have been a lot of webinars on this. And the way that I have looked at this is, since you're able to, under the ADA, provided you provide the exemptions under the ADA and the Title VII, that you are permitted to mandate, but now the question is, should you mandate? And it really, how I look at it, it's a not an easy decision by any means for any business. There have been a number of higher education universities that have made a decision that they are going to vaccinate students that are returning to their campuses. I believe my recollection is correct. I think Rutgers was the first to do that. I believe Oakland in the state of Michigan is doing it. There's been a number of other universities, and I think Notre Dame is also on the list, that are going to require students to be vaccinated. It's an area that is fraught with, it's a fraught topic. You have a national politicizing of the virus, what other side of the fence you're on. We've had a number of safety measures that have been implemented, and then the virus has resulted in shutdowns. Here in Michigan, everybody knows that we went on a very hard lockdown. Other states did not. Even the shutdown itself was looked at through the political scope, whether it was the Republican, the Democrats, those that were trying to benefit from it. So not only has the virus brought out many issues with regards to the vaccine itself, it is really a political hotbed. So that leads then to a divided society on whether the vaccines are even working. Are they safe despite the science? There's a lot of misinformation out there on various social media platforms that have probably made people to second guess whether they even are going to get it. Is it something that I want to even put in my body? We'll address it later with regards to the way it was developed and approved. But, you have to look at the information you're getting. and what method you're getting that information. And then you have to really make a decision on your self if you want to get the vaccination. Now, from the company's aspect, employees could be divided. You have these individuals that are within society that then come as employees of your various companies, and they're divided within the company. And now if you have a company that is going to try to mandate it, what's the temperature of your employees? Are they a group that, yes, we should get it, we all believe in it, or is it more of a group that, no, we don't want it, we don't trust the government, this was shoved down our throats, and now we have a company that is trying to shove this down our throats now. It's a way you have to take the temperature of your company. How are your employees perceiving this? And then also, what will the mandating of the vaccine do to your morale? Will it result in people wanting to leave? Would they, and if they do leave, do you have an ability to replace them? What type of an industry are you in? If you're going to mandate it at the restaurant level, there's been a number of restaurants that can't even find help. So what is that going to do to morale? What's that going to do to employees? So a lot of things have to be taken into consideration if there is a decision to mandate the vaccine. And then thoughts on is, as I touched upon earlier, is what industry are you in? If you're primarily outdoors in the construction area, mandating it may not be the best move to make. It may not be a move that really would be beneficial. However, if you are have an industry that is in close contact with the society, such as maybe hospitals, nursing homes, are you a first responder? Do you provide quarters for first responders? What is the nature of your business? So that needs to be looked at. And is that something that, you would, there would be a great benefit to mandating the vaccination? Then to dovetail into that is the contact that your employees have with the public. And then, are your employees able to work remotely? Are there any alternatives? I know a lot of, from my perspective in my business, we do have the ability to work remotely. There's a lot of other positions, such as my wife at the University of Michigan. She's able to work remotely, but there are some businesses that you can't. You need to be in your office, or you need to be in an area that is that requires your presence, and it may not be the safest area if you're in close contact with other individuals. And then if you mandate it, what number will object or refuse? And are you able to accommodate that number of people who may object to it or refuse? And if they object, if it's your policy, you do have the ability to remove them. If it's, clearly written, distributed, they have knowledge of it, it's non-discriminatory. And if they refuse, and if they're given the accommodation for either a religious or a medical reason, you also have to look at, are there other maybe people behind the scenes that maybe there's fraud involved? They may not have a disability. You now have additional work to fraught that out, and then find out if the are actually legitimate reasons. And then if they are, you have to accommodate them, provided it's not an undue hardship. And then the big thing is, are you able to act under a mandatory vaccination scenario? Are you willing to make the difficult decisions to possibly remove somebody from your workforce because that person does not want to get vaccinated and it does not have an exemption to fall under? So you have to be willing to act on that policy, because if you don't and then you act on somebody else, it could possibly be perceived as discriminatory, depending on how the individuals that are involved, and now you're putting yourself into a worse position than you were before. And then also we have the vaccines that are not offering complete protection. latest that I heard from Pfizer is that a booster will be needed in 6 or 9 months. So what's the point of getting this vaccine if I'm going to have a booster later on? We don't really know if it's working. There's been issues with Johnson and Johnson. They've been stopped from providing it, and I believe they've also been prevented from or requested to stop the production of it while they look into it. So it's not something that these vaccines are not like the flu vaccine that have been around for a while. So there is a lot of skepticism involved. And you can see both sides of the fence. You know, I want to get it just because I want to go on, live my life, get back to some form of normalcy. But then you have the other side that, well, you know what, let's pause a little bit because we really don't know what's happening with this vaccine. We have some issues with the Johnson and Johnson. You know, depending on how you look at the numbers, it's 1 in every million, but still it's one person. If I take that, will I be one of those individuals to have an adverse reaction? So these are some thoughts that have to be taken into consideration. And then moving on to additional thoughts is whether to mandate is look at your company's culture. You know, as you may think I keep repeating myself throughout this, but you really have to look at your company and, you know, how is it made up, you know, the type of people that are there. And then, you know, employees are required to work in person. You know, you have the manufacturing industry standing close in proximity to each other while they, assemble a vehicle going down the line. And then you have the restaurants that are always, you know, within probably a few feet of a table speaking to customers. And then you have the hospitals. You know, you have the people that are in the emergency room, doctors, nurses that are even hands-on with the patients. You know, that might be an area that you might look at possible mandating it. Unless if you can find a way to make accommodations where you can have the 6 feet. Even with the vaccination, we're looking at even continuing on with masks. So the thought process there is, why am I going to get a vaccine if I still have to wear a mask? They're extremely different, but that is a thought process that's out there. And then employees that are able to work remotely. You know, if you're able to, as a business owner or a manager, senior management, and you are able to put in a policy and allow certain employees to work remotely, they have that ability, then you can allow them to make that decision, whether or not they want to get the vaccination or not. So again, you have to look at what the makeup of your company, and then also the culture to make sure that you lessen any division amongst your employees. Now, if you do not mandate, you make the decision that yes, the laws are out there, you know, we can mandate if we want, but you know what, let's just take a pause and let's not mandate it. And if you do go down that path, there are ways, and there's a number of things that are being done within the communities. Even the city of Detroit is coming out with ways to get people to get vaccinated. You, as a business, we'd all like to get back up and running, you know, full steam, 100%. And maybe the way we do that is through the vaccination. But you've made a decision as a business owner, I'm not going to mandate this, but I want to strongly encourage it. So encouraging it versus mandating, here, you want to encourage it. And that can be done through education. You can educate why it's important to get the vaccine. I alluded to earlier that there's a lot of misinformation out there. A lot of it is on social media. It's amazing of what we actually read that appear to come from legitimate sites. And a lot of people, you know, hold truth to that. So you can educate them. You can put on, have people come in from the medical community, and then for other areas to discuss with your staff. This is why it's important to get vaccinated. And then you can also communicate reasons why you as a business are not mandating it. You're looking at the value of personal accountability. You're looking at employees making their own decisions and hopefully the right decisions for the greater safety of the public and safety of the business. So you communicate why you aren't mandating it, and you also tell them that, you know what, it's the value of your own personal accountability, and you're able to make your own decisions. But with this education, we hopefully you will hopefully make the decision to get vaccinated. And then you can encourage and assist employees to get vaccinated. This encouraging is done through both the educational aspect that we discussed, as well as communicating reasons why you aren't mandating, which you can, dovetail into encouraging. And that can be done through incentives. This is another area where there are a number of businesses that have provided for incentives. Incentives we haven't really got any very good guidance as to what is an appropriate incentive. It has to be one that is just a small value. There's been a few gift cards that have been, I think Target has given out gift cards, Kroger has given out gift cards. It has to be something that is a small value. There's been some businesses that have looked at providing for gym memberships, health and wellness for the year, which can equate to over $500 from some of the, like $50 a month. Now you're in excess of $500. That probably would not hold well with the EOC because of the amount. So $100, $50, a small incentive would be appropriate. You have to look at it from the aspect, if you give like a $500 gift card, is the person who is going to be receiving this incentive taking that incentive merely because of the amount? $500 could pay for rent, and doing the hardship, I need to pay my rent, so I'm going to get it. So now you're more or less inducing an individual to get vaccinated, which is opposite of what this incentive is meant to do here. Now, the other area is if you have an individual who has not been, has an accommodation, afforded an accommodation to not get it, and now there's incentives for others, you can put in a program that the incentive could be achieved by those individuals who have been exempt from getting the vaccination if they attend an educational course, maybe on vaccines, on health awareness. So there's ways that you can still implement the incentive program to those that have been removed from it because of an accommodation. The other way you can do it is be a role model. You as a CEO, the owner, or senior management, if you start getting it, the vaccination, and then communicating to others, it's a trickle down. It starts at the top, and if the senior individuals are getting the vaccination, it bodes well to those that are in lesser positions within the company to jump on board if others are doing it. There are also potential liabilities if you mandate the vaccination. If an adverse reaction occurs and it is being mandated by the company, then your workers' comp, it'll bring up workers' comp issues. Now, you have to look at, does your workers' comp cover it? Most probably will, but it's best to check with your carrier. The other area is potential long-term health consequences. This is a vaccination that has been out there for not that long compared to the flu vaccines. So there are some adverse reactions that we are aware of, but those are immediate right now. What will happen in the future? We don't know. So is there potential liability in the future if you've mandated it now for your employees, going forward, say 5, 6, 7 years? Are you going to be on the hook because you mandated this vaccination? Legal immunities, you cannot pursue an action against the pharmaceutical company. They do have an immunity. I don't know, it probably is part of the vaccination fund that is set up, that is similar to the one that is used by the flu vaccine. And then also retaliation. If an individual doesn't want the vaccination, you have to be careful that you don't retaliate against that individual in any way, curtailing the person's employment. And then if it is mandatory and something happens to the individual and that person is now out of the workforce, maybe you terminate, etc., is that retaliation? So you have to be mindful of these potential liabilities if you do mandate. Now, retaliation, that goes with all of them. If a person has a legitimate reason for not taking or getting the vaccination, you cannot retaliate against that individual because of that accommodation. Then we have mandating under the EUA. This is an interesting case that has come about in New Mexico, and it's an individual who's actually a first responder who refused to get the vaccination. Now, the individual has not been terminated. The plaintiff refused to provide information substantiating why he could not get the vaccination. And so he had brought a motion for an injunction, but the court denied it because he still had his job. And under the plaintiff's moving under this is whether or not you can mandate a vaccination that has been approved under the emergency use authorization. In particular is what I have here on the screen, and that is what is quoted. An individual must be informed of the option to accept or refuse administration of the product, of the consequences, if any, of refusing administration of the product, and of the alternatives to the product that are available, and of the benefits and risks. Now, in reading the complaint that was filed in the case in New Mexico, the real focus here is of the option to accept or refuse administration of the product. The focus is on the first part of the sentence. So based upon that first part, it is allowing for an individual to have the option to accept or refuse it. That is really, from my reading, what they're basing their suit on, that you cannot mandate it because of the fact that it is the person has the right to accept or refuse. And then also because of the trials that the emergency use authorization is much less than when it is fully approved by the FDA. So here, the second part of the sentence is of the consequences. So what is the meaning of the consequences? And I think that's where the court is going to be instrumental. You have legal uncertainty in this area. There's an ethical argument as to that products are still experimental and should not be mandated. Now, I attended a webinar that was put on by an individual who was worked within the pharmaceutical area. And he had said that this is actually much further along than what is the normal EUA. How much of that is true? I would assume it is because he put it out there. But it's the fact that it is so far along, it's his belief that is mandating under this EUA is appropriate given the FDA is close to approving it for full use. But the big question here is what is meant by consequences? Should you refuse the product? Are you refusing it under health reasons, employment, access to education, use of public transportation, shop in stores? What is the consequence? If I refuse it, well, I can't go to school. Or is it that I can't use the public bus to go to and from work? I can't shop in certain stores. So the question is really, what are the consequences that are being, what is meant by the consequences that is referenced in the EUA? And it's an area that, to me, a first impression, I have not seen any other cases that have defined what the consequences are. It is to me, a novel approach for the lawsuit, but it's only looking at the first part of the sentence. So with that, the EUA, I believe you will be able to mandate it. I have nothing really to go by other than looking at the EEOC, and then provided that you do have the consequences that are laid out, which is most likely, you know what, if you can take it or you don't have to. But if you do, these are the consequences, possibly the adverse reactions. If you don't take it, these are the consequences of, having to possibly employment will be curtailed, or you may lose your job if we have a policy. Access to education. There are a number of universities out there that are requiring students to get vaccinated before coming in. Okay, so now you cannot. So these are all the options that are going to have to be laid out to the individuals. And then again, the takeaways, is it legal? Generally, yes. The second part, is it right for your workplace? I think that's something that each employer needs to really look at, and be mindful of potential liabilities. I keep repeating myself, but I think it's really an individual business decision. And then once you take the heartbeat of your business, then I think you will make the most appropriate decision. And if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them. You're on mute.
I am not any longer on mute. Thank you, Terry. As he outlined, there are still lots of questions, and it's a very big decision to make for each business. Are there any other questions that anyone has for Terry? We will, with Terry's permission, we can post the documents. I think we have 2 raised hands. Hold on one sec. Let me see if we can find those.
You can always provide my email address, and my phone number is on the front part of the slide. Feel free to call. I'm always available.
Okay, I'm just. All right, Dan has his hand up. Let's see if we can.
Alex Breland, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So thanks for the presentation today. You gave some helpful information. My question is, with people getting vaccinated at higher rates, is there anything an employer can do to ease some of the cautionary measures they take in the workplace, particularly for vaccinated employees?
Well, we're still under the mask ban, or I shouldn't say the ban. We're still under the guidance of utilizing masks. I don't think right now there have been any retractions by the health department as to easing any of the mandates that have been put into place, such as masks. Now, there have been a number of things that have taken place, and I meant to mention this because of coming in today. They opened it up. I heard on the radio today that they opened up the vaccinations to everybody, and that they have now in the city of Detroit have walk-ups, but they are not seeing the number of people getting them that they had thought. So I still think there is this group in society that is still very hesitant. So even with the ability to walk up and get vaccinated, they're not seeing the numbers that they had anticipated. So I still think that there is a pause within our society with getting the vaccination. But I have not seen anything, to answer your question, that relieves any of the mandates that are in place for businesses.
Thank you.
I think we have to wait for the herd immunity. That might be a time when some restrictions are relieved.
Okay. Greg, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Janet, and thank you for the presentation. It was very, very informative. I asked the question about mandating short of having the local or state health departments stating that you could. And I think the confusion is that the CDC, which many of us look to for guidance because it's referred to so frequently in things like my OSHA orders and such, is vague relative to the ability to mandate. And I think the confusion comes from the CDC because I believe they state that yes, you can if it's mandated by the local or state health department or others. And that's where I think this whole question of can you mandate it? It's really still very, very questionable, I think. And then you pointed out, I think correctly so, all the practical implications that I think, for the most part, drive a lot of decisions, particularly if employers have collective bargaining agreements with.
That's a huge one, Gregory.
Yeah.
Because can you mandate it? That might be something that you have to bargain.
Yeah.
But you hit it right on the head, the nail on the head, and that is we don't have any real guidance.
Yeah.
And if some organization, some agency would just come out and say, yes, you can mandate, or yes, you can mandate, but only in these industries, it would be much, much easier, but nobody has taken that position. Is it a political position? Probably. Maybe that's the way they're looking at it. But I mean, from the employer's standpoint, we need some guidance, and we are looking to you, the CDC, the EOC, and these administrations, and we're not getting it.
Yeah. Just a final comment. You pointed out, I think quite appropriately, the fact that OSHA considers it that you've got a duty.
Yes.
And yet you did point out the practical implications and the subsequent liabilities that an employer could suffer if there are long-term or short-term side effects from the vaccine. So again, I appreciate the practical applications that you provided at the end. That I think were very, very helpful.
Okay, then. Any other questions? Hearing none, then I thank you all again for joining us today and look forward to seeing you next Tuesday for the Well Building Institute Health and Safety Ratings for Buildings. Thank you again, Terrence, for all your the helpful information today, and I wish you all a safe, healthy weekend. Thank you.
Thank you.